Hello, this is a fun-filled video called Annoying Ways People Use Sources. It's not meant to insult you, but it is meant to show you that sometimes when readers are reading your stuff, they get annoyed when you don't follow little bitty conventions. So sometimes it can make you look bad. I'm gonna, in a lot of places, quote from this awesome book by Derek Bell called Faces at the Bottom of the Well, The Permanence of Racism. At the end of the book, he tells this hypothetical story in which he hypothesizes that if aliens came down to the United States and said, we will fix all kinds of your American social problems for one condition, if you give us all the African Americans in the country and let us take them away into space to do whatever we want with them. And his hypothesis is that if that happened, white American leaders would agree to the trade. So if you're confused by some of these quotes, that's what it's referring to. Check the book out if you want. You'll notice in this slideshow that I'll occasionally highlight things in yellow, which means look especially at this annoying part of the sentence, and then I'll explain the problem in red, and then I'll fix them in blue. It's so calming and nice. The first kind of annoying thing I want to talk about is the dead dog in the road quotation. You've experienced this, right? There's a dead dog in the road, and if you went over it, it'd be like, boom, boom. And you'd just be, whoa, where did that come from? What was going on there? Well, I think it's the same when a quotation is dropped in with no explanation or introduction at all. Here's an example from my hypothetical paper. If aliens from outer space came to America, they might have things we need. Boom, boom. Whoa, suddenly we're in a quote. Where did this quote come from? You didn't set the quote up for me at all. Well, the way to fix that is really pretty easy. You just have to change the first sentence so it introduces the idea, introduces the writer that you actually are going to quote. Here's what it might look like. Oh, Derek Bell describes a situation in which aliens from outer space came to America carrying helpful supplies. He writes, oh, that's so nice. I knew what was coming up in the quote. It was introduced. No longer was it a dead dog in the road. It was a smooth river bend. I don't know, something like that. The next annoying thing is the fancy dinner quotation. I call it that when a quotation is introduced with an unnecessary colon or comma. You know how if you're having a fancy dinner, you put out all this extra fancy stuff that you don't really need on the table. For example, see that highlighted colon there? That's fancy. You don't need it. It's actually grammatically wrong there. Here's another one. Ooh, unnecessary. Why are you putting all this fancy stuff out? Let's just have normal, plain punctuation the way it should be. Let me break that down a little. When you introduce a quotation with a word like writes, says, explains, describes, just use a comma. Here's the annoying one that you saw a second ago, but look, here's how it's fixed. Oh, so nice. Explains, comma. That's the way it should be. It's not annoying. It's perfectly nice. Our second example that we saw a second ago is when you introduce a quote with the word that. You almost never need a comma. It's just a really common way that people write a lot of times. I know it's annoying. Here was our annoying one, extra fancy. See that little comma? It's like putting out a gilded silver gravy boat. But here it is fixed without the comma. Explains that. Oh, it's so nice. It's just, you just want to sit down and sit around that table and eat pizza all night. Or hummus. I don't know. Okay. The keep on driving until you end up in a ditch quotation, where it makes a run-on sentence. This is the kind of quotation where I'm moving along in the sentence, and then I think it's going to stop, and I don't think it's going to stop, and it doesn't stop, and it doesn't stop, and it just keeps on going until it ends up in a ditch. Here's an example. Bell describes a situation where these aliens make a startling demand, comma, you just said an entire sentence. You can't end an entire sentence with a comma. Now you might say, wait, you just said a second ago you should use commas before quotations. Well, not always. In this situation, the first part before the quotation is a complete sentence. So it feels like a run-on. It actually is a run-on. It's a comma splice, if you want to look that up. Here is some explanation. When your introductory sentence makes a complete sentence and doesn't end with one of those verbs we talked about in the last one, use a colon to introduce the quotation. And here's a little hint. You're almost always going to use a colon to introduce a long block quotation. You know, one of those quotes that you indent a little bit on the left. Here's an example. We changed that comma to a colon here, and suddenly it grammatically, mechanically works. This is a correct sentence. No longer is this an annoying, grabs my attention away from the topic of your paper. You should know that. Okay, quick review. I know that was a lot of stuff just dumped on you. If your sentence leading up to the quotation ends with writes, says, explains, one of those verbs, use a comma before it. But if the last word is that, don't use any punctuation. Just say that and move it straight into the quote. But if the last word doesn't fit into one of those above options and there's a complete sentence for the quote, use a colon. Now that isn't going to take every single situation, but those are three things that it's good to keep in mind, so that when you see something that breaks one of these three rules, you'll know it. Okay, the I cuss in the movie theater when I sit next to young children, comma. This came from an actual experience of mine. I was in a movie theater, and I was sitting next to or behind two teenagers, and one said to another, "Hey, you better not cuss. There's a little kid right next to me on the other side." And the other cussing kid said, "No way, I am a cusser and there's nothing I can do to stop myself, so that kid had just better deal with my cussing." I couldn't really believe it. I was a little shocked. So that cusser was taking the stance that no matter what the situation, I am always going to act exactly the same. And sometimes I think people place commas in the same way, as if my comma will always go in the same place no matter what. That's just how it is. Arr! When really you have to adjust a little bit sometimes. Here's the situation. Notice here at the end of this sentence, there's a period and it's outside of the quotation mark. And you might say, that's perfectly right. It is perfectly right. This is a great period placement. You're following the rules when you use a citation. So that person says, I don't care what I'm going to do. I always put my punctuation outside the quote, so I'm going to do it here too after author. Well, that person is being like the movie theater cusser. Here's the thing. When there's no parenthetical citation, commas and periods always go inside quotation marks. This is a really easy rule. It's complicated if you start reading stuff published in the UK, because in Britain they do things differently. Oh well. For us, we always put them inside unless there's some kind of a citation there. Here's what I mean. Space traders offer, comma, quotation mark. See how I moved it inside? So you're going to have to deal with the fact that sometimes commas go inside and sometimes they go outside, or commas or periods. Now this is different with question marks and exclamation points and things like that. Look it up. Next, the I swear I did some research paraphrase. This is a citation where I get the feeling that the student writer is trying to say, look, I used this source, I promise, I swear. But I'm like, where did you use it? What did you use it for? Here's an example. Here's three lovely sentences that the student essay has. Okay, great, these are all good sentences, making an interesting point. But then look at this kind of random citation at the end. What exactly came from Bell, page 160? Is it this first part? It's possible that is it the second part? Is it the third part? Is it the second and third? I'm baffled. To me it looks like he wrote these three great sentences and said, I guess I kind of read Bell when I kind of wrote this, so I'll kind of drop it in. Okay, here's the thing. Always when you're using a paraphrase, when you're not using a quotation, in other words, it's crucial that you let your readers know what came from the source you're quoting, or paraphrasing, I'm sorry, and what came from yourself. Here's a way to do that. Two simple little additions. I added in a I find that, so that it's very clear that this sentence came from me, the writer. And then Bell explains that. Oh, now it's totally clear what came from him. It turns out it was only that third sentence. Who knew? I had no way of knowing before. I think this is the last one. The I had to work, so my reader should too. This is when a writer is like, hey, I've been working so hard on this essay, I don't care if I make it easy for my reader. Well, get over yourself. Come on. That's annoying. Now here's an example. When the president discusses the issue with his cabinet, it's clear that he has already made up his mind. Faces. This writer says, I'll just somehow mention the thing that I'm quoting from, and that'll be good enough. As long as I mention it, they'll be able to find it. Well, you're making work hard for us. The way that readers read citations is we look at this and we say, faces. Okay, I'm going to go to the F section of the works cited page and find it there. Works cited F section. Wait, there is no F section. I'm totally baffled. Well, that's because the first thing on the works cited list for this source is Bell. That means that Bell is what needs to go inside here. I basically just said all this. Extra. This is often an issue. In other words, people often mess this up with websites. It's really common for people to want to put the actual web address in there, but according to MLA format, you actually put the last name of the author, or perhaps it would be the title of the article. It's whatever the first thing that you find on that works cited entry. So here's how that one we just looked at would be fixed. If you're baffled and I went over that too fast for this or for any of these, look it up. Hey, it's not that hard. The lesson here is don't be annoying. I congratulate you on your ability to now move forward and not use quotations and sources. Annoying. Good night. And by the way, the music in this recording is by a group called Four Stones. The song's called The Original AP, and it's original for free on ccmixter.org.